In 1927, just 2 years before the death of her husband, General Bramwell Booth, Florence Booth offered this challenge to the Salvation Army. The kingdom of Satan and sin will never be overthrown by a body of officers as officers only. Our founders raised the Salvation Army because they saw clearly there should be an army of fighting men and women. The churches have erred by shutting out the laity and making God's work depend on the leaders only. And the army was raised up as a protest against this very mistake. Do not ape the parson. Do not imitate the church. Let your great aim be to raise an army that shall glorify God by fighting his battles. Florence sensed something was changing, that out of the very success of the Salvation Army, it was at risk of becoming the thing it had been raised up to challenge. Catherine and William Booth deliberately threw away the model of priest, people and parish that had dominated Christianity for over 1,000 years. Why? Because it was no longer working. The great industrial revolution of the 19th century forced people out of villages and parishes of a few hundred souls into teeming cities where parish boundaries contained hundreds of thousands of souls. The masses were missing the gospel. Catherine and William Booth were committed to a larger vision of church, one inherited through their great hero, John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, who, when challenged on parish ministry, famously declared, "The world is my parish." Wesley and later Booth rejected the reformed Calvinist idea of the church being essentially comprised of independent self-managed congregations. They reached back to the older Anglican and Catholic traditions of the Church Universal as a concrete reality. This was especially true of Catherine and William's denomination, the Methodist New Connection, which strongly believed the church was a connected body, not a series of independent congregations. The other insight from Wesley was a fresh understanding of the priesthood of all believers. This was not just a theological notion, but a practical reality. Church was no longer a place for members to be ministered to. Passive congregations and membership were scrapped in favour of activism and soldiership, soldiers working in organised teams. Settled parish churches with services for the faithful gave way to meetings held in halls for converting the non-believers. The Salvation Army citadel was a place for the activists to be organised. It was profoundly radical. At the core, its purpose was to mobilise and sustain local activism in the cause of global redemption. Over recent years, as Salvationists have looked to other models of church to assist and sustain congregations, we've often drawn on church growth models which come from the Reformed or Calvinist tradition. This is one where the church is essentially a local worshipping community. Such models, though useful, ultimately may serve only to imitate the church, amplifying the very concerns outlined by Florence Booth and perhaps frustrating the wider ends for which God raised up the Salvation Army.